It's nice to see everyone. Thank you for coming. We are delighted to welcome Yaa Gyasi to Fisher's Island to give a reading, join in dialogue with our own Anna Noyes. Wanted to thank Anna for being here 3-4 days from giving birth.
Hopefully, yeah.
Also wanted to thank the library, Fisher's Island Library, for being such wonderful partners. This is the fifth of a series of readings that have happened here in partnership with Lighthouse Works. It's a really wonderful way for both our organizations to do the thing we love, which is to introduce artists to the island, support their work, make space for them to read, and to promote kind of interesting dialogues and conversations that happen alongside of it. I'm going to stop talking, but before I start, I'm going to read Yaa's bio. We'll turn it over to Anna to do a proper introduction of her work, and we'll go from there. So, Yaa Gyasi was born in Mampong, Ghana, and raised in Huntsville, Alabama. Her first novel, Homegoing, won the National Book Critics Circle John Leonard Award for Best First Book, and Hemingway Award, the National Book Foundation's 535 Honors for 2016, and the American Book Award. Her second novel, Transcendent Kingdom, was a finalist for the Women's Prize. She lives in Brooklyn, New York. Yes.
This is just the coolest thing to see so many of you here tonight on a November evening. I was warning Yaa, there might be like 10 people, but that's like 10% of the island's population right now, so you're fine. But it's just amazing to see you all, and I'm delighted. And I see some new faces out here too, so I just want to reiterate what Nate said. This is the fifth of a series that we hope to have be ongoing, a collaboration between Lighthouse Works and the library, bringing acclaimed visiting authors like Yaa to our little island. And so if you like what you've seen at the library, a donation helps these things move forward. There's a QR code that Bonnie just placed on a little table out there that makes it easy. But we really appreciate any form of support in any way, including especially just your presence here, is a huge support for us and means a lot. So thank you so much. And I think this collaboration is really heartwarming. It means a lot. And there's a shelf out with all the Lighthouse Works past fellows published work that you can check out if you're curious, as well as the visiting writers' work. There'll be Yaa's books out there. So now, it is my great pleasure to introduce you to Yaa Gyasi. Yaa's novels radiate grounded, steady confidence. In Homegoing, which remarkably spans 8 generations and 250 years across Ghana and America, or Transcendent Kingdom, where the scope is no less ambitious in its exploration of one character's complex emotional and familial terrain from childhood to adulthood. Yaa slips into expansive fictional worlds with apparent ease, despite the breadth covered across time, place, and context. Anything but easy in the hands of a lesser writer. Yaa's work seems to trust itself, extending this generosity of trust to the reader. She offers us vivid, beautiful storytelling that does not look away from pain, speaking what must be spoken. Likewise, she honors the unknowns, gaps, and rifts in lineage, the absent narratives and traumas that inform character and ourselves, as much or more than what can be passed down. Yaa, echoing Toni Morrison, has said she writes the books she wants and needs to read. Despite reaching hundreds of thousands upon publication, it's clear these books are forged in a place of interior knowing and truth, the author's deepest self, the surest barometer. We are so lucky to join her there. And please join me in welcoming Yaa Gyasi one more time. And now if you just want to go ahead and read.
Okay, great. Hi, everybody. Thank you. There's a...
Sorry, one thing I have to say, in addition to Yaa,
Hi. Okay. So, hi, everyone. This is my second child. This is Cliff. And with my first, I didn't do an event until she was like 14 months. So this is new for me. We'll see if we can calm him down and also do this at the same time. And then I'll pass him back.
This event has some strong maternal energy behind it. I feel like the two of us combined are like really powerful.
I'm going to read from the beginning of this novel, Homegoing. Sorry about that. Okay. The night Afia Otre was born into the musky heat of Fanti land, a fire raged through the woods just outside her father's compound. It moved quickly, tearing a path for days. It lived off the air. It slept in caves and hidden trees. It burned up and through, unconcerned with what wreckage it left behind, until it reached an Ashanti village. There, it disappeared, becoming one with the night. Afia's father, Kobi Otre, left his first wife, Baba, with the new baby, so that he might survey the damage to his yams, that most precious crop known far and wide to sustain families. Kobi had lost 7 yams, and he felt each loss as a blow to his own family. He knew then that the memory of the fire that burned, then fled, would haunt him, his children, and his children's children for as long as the line continued. When he came back into Baba's hut to find Afia, the child of the night's fire, shrieking into the air, he looked at his wife and said, "We will never again speak of what happened today." The villagers began to say that the baby was born of the fire, that this was the reason Baba had no milk. Afia was nursed by Kobi's second wife, who had just given birth to a son 3 months before. Afia would not latch on, and when she did, her sharp gums would tear at the flesh around the woman's nipples until she became afraid to feed the baby. Because of this, Afia grew thinner, skin on small bird-like bones, with a large black hole of a mouth that expelled a hungry cry, which could be heard throughout the village, even on the days Baba did her best to smother it, covering the baby's lips with the rough palm of her left hand. "Love her," Kobi commanded, as though love were as simple an act as lifting food up from an iron plate and past one's lips. At night, Baba dreamed of leaving the baby in the dark forest so that the god Nyame could do with her as he pleased. Afia grew older. The summer after her 3rd birthday, Baba had her first son. The boy's name was Fifi, and he was so fat that sometimes, when Baba wasn't looking, Afia would roll him along the ground like a ball. The first day that Baba let Afia hold him, she accidentally dropped him. The baby bounced on his buttocks, landed on his stomach, and looked up at everyone in the room, confused as to whether or not he should cry. He decided against it, but Baba, who had been stirring Benku, lifted her stirring stick and beat Afia across her bare back. Each time the stick lifted off the girl's body, it would leave behind hot, sticky pieces of Benku that burned into her flesh. By the time Baba had finished, Afia was covered with sores, screaming and crying. From the floor, rolling this way and that on his belly, Fifi looked at Afia with his saucer eyes, but made no noise. Kobi came home to find his other wives attending to Afia's wounds and understood immediately what had happened. He and Baba fought well into the night. Afia could hear them through the thin walls of the hut, where she lay on the floor, drifting in and out of a feverish sleep. In her dream, Kobi was a lion, and Baba was a tree. The lion plucked the tree from the ground where it stood and slammed it back down. The tree stretched its branches in protest, and the lion ripped them off one by one. The tree, horizontal, began to cry red ants that traveled down the thin cracks between its bark. The ants pooled on the soft earth around the top of the tree trunk. And so the cycle began. Baba beat Afia. Kobi beat Baba. By the time Afia had reached age 10, she could recite a history of the scars on her body. the summer of 1764, when Baba broke yams across her back, the spring of 1767, when Baba bashed her left foot with a rock, breaking her big toe so that it now always pointed away from the other toes. For each scar on Afia's body, there was a companion scar on Baba's. But that didn't stop mother from beating daughter, father from beating mother. Matters were only made worse by Afia's blossoming beauty. When she was 12, her breast arrived, 2 lumps that sprung from her chest, as soft as mango flesh. The men of the village knew that blood would soon follow, and they waited for the chance to ask Baba and Kobi for her hand. The gifts started. That's okay. One man tapped palm wine better than anyone else in the village, but another's fishing nets were never empty. Kobi's family feasted off of Afia's burgeoning womanhood. Their bellies, their hands were never empty. We'll start then.
I wish you could just keep going. I'm like so loud. And this guy's like, beautiful face.
No, he's just
staring
like-
back at me.
It's like, what happened?
Yeah.
Oh, thanks.
I feel like that sort of inciting incident of the fire is such a like potent, beautiful moment. And yet it also like is not elaborated on for pages and pages. You know, you kind of get a hint of it.
Yeah.
And then the story carries through, and there's like lots of really haunting imagery of fire and of a woman fleeing, and you know, dreams and symbolism that kind of like are a through line of that inciting moment.
Yeah.
And I guess I'm curious, like a couple questions, like what about that kind of struck you as the place to begin, or this kind of like seed, but also like, was there something in kind of allowing it to be off the page a little bit, but, you know, to exist in kind of like almost a mythical realm that gives it maybe like a broader scope than its particulars to those few characters and that moment? Like it feels like it, with the symbolism that it accrues throughout the generations,
Yeah.
it kind of takes on something a little wilder, larger,
Yeah.
encompasses like a rage or
Yeah.
a heat that is beyond that one night.
No, that's a great question. There wasn't, I'm not a big like pre-planner or outliner, so I often don't know where I'm going when I start a project. And with this, I'd been working off and on for years on something that I thought was a book, thought was this book, and I probably had like 100 or so pages that I threw out like over the years. And then I started this chapter, and it basically didn't change much from what I read to you, from what I started to what I read to you. It just felt like it, as though you had like a large roll of janitor's keys, and I kept like trying each one. And then when I got to this opening, I was like, oh, this is the book. And so it started for me with that fire and that image of somebody. I don't think this is a spoiler, but basically somebody sets a fire to escape out of this union that was, union is strong, out of this kind of forced enslavement. And so for me, the fire was the anchor. But then as I started to think about the structure of this book, which took me a while to get to, and for those who don't know, it's structured kind of like a fishtail book. There are 2 matriarchs of either side of the family, and it goes down the line, one generation after the other, on either side, ending with the two last descendants. But at any rate, once I figured out the structure, I realized that I needed something that was going to allow the book to cohere, because the kind of satisfactions that you get out of a regularly structured novel were not going to be available to you in this. You lose a character every chapter, and we basically never return to them. And so I wanted Afia and Essie, the next character, to be remembered somehow. And so the fire became really important in that way. So down the line of her generation, fire keeps popping up. There are characters who are burned by fire, characters who set fire, characters who have scars, characters who are afraid of fire. And that felt to me like one opportunity to keep Afia alive, even though we lose her after this chapter. Similarly, on Essie's side, there's water, and this relationship to water that keeps coming back and back since she was sent through the Middle Passage. And so it does have this. I think mythic is a good word for it. But also like kind of a family lore feeling. I wanted it to feel the way we experience our families, like through those stories that get passed down. And so the fact that Afia is called the child of the night's fire and then keeps being referred to in that way, I feel like the kind of family mythology begins with fire.
Yeah. Yeah, I love these sort of narrative touchstones that carry through the generations because it's nice to have something almost tangible. Like you also have a black stone necklace that the mother who flees gives to each of her daughters respectively, and then you trace this necklace. Now one of them gets buried, but one of them gets carried forward, and it's sort of you could almost like feel it, in your chest or in your hand. The idea of this stone that kind of gave like I said, like a touchstone throughout these generations, and those little cues really helped kind of keep the line, and the resonance.
Exactly. The necklace serves the same purpose, and in fact, that wasn't in the early drafts. Anna, I don't know if Anna mentioned, we went to the same grad school. We went to the writer's workshop together. She was the year above us. I'm saying us because my partner is also here who also went. But at any rate, the director of the program, Samantha Chang, was my advisor. And this was the book that I was working on at the time. And she read a draft of it. And she was the one who said, it'd be nice to have a physical object that we follow as well, for the same reasons, just to kind of have something that the reader can attach onto that allows the book to cohere. And so I spent a few drafts trying to figure out how to incorporate that stone. Like, would it make sense for Essie's line to keep it? Would it make sense for them to like find it at the end and have this like big
I thought that was really
reveal?
poignant in the ending, because it gets buried in this slave castle in Ghana, and so they don't return and find the stone, which I think would be much more like melodramatic and unbelievable. But one character gifts her stone to the other, and it's like this beautiful shared, coming together of these family lines.
Right, and the reader gets to. I mean, I think one of the like devastating aspects of slavery was the fact that so many people can't really trace their families back beyond a certain point because. Well, for obvious reasons. And so one thing that I think this book tries to do is to offer a kind of restoration. Marcus will never know who his great-grandparents are, but we know, and we know the kind of qualities that he inherited because H was in his lineage. And same thing goes for that stone. Like, obviously Marcus is never going to know that he had one too, or that one was his birthright as well. But we as readers get to feel that that restoration happen.
Yeah, there's something that felt really like.
Did somebody get a napkin?
Oh my god!
Thank you very much.
Really like healing and poignant in getting to know those histories.
Thank you.
That weren't shared, that weren't knowable to the characters themselves.
Yeah.
And another question I had was, I feel like you really interesting, have really interesting restraint with like what you have on the page and what the characters are sort of allowed to know, or the reader is allowed to know within these little chapters. So it's like 20 or 30 page chapters that encapsulate each character, but there's also like a lot is shown in those chapters, but a lot also does exist in the gaps, and the reader is filling in, oh my goodness, this character that I got attached to, this is what happened to them. And you only get this like tiny fraction of knowledge that is what is passed down, so you're also kind of alongside the characters in this place of like received knowledge or unknown lineage, as well as getting a lot of more context and kind of like what makes them and informs them. But how did you choose like when to end the chapter and what to show? Because I feel like you had a great facility for someone who didn't know where the book was going to be like, this very significant battle or in between tragedy or something. It's like there was like a sure-footedness and like, I'm not going to show that. How did you parse that, or did you do a lot of cutting? Or
Okay, I wasn't completely honest when I said I do no outlining. I made a family tree that looks a lot like the one at the front of the book, except mine also had dates and then maybe like one significant thing that was going on during each time period. And sometimes the chapter would address that thing head on. Like for Kojo's chapter, it was the Fugitive Slave Act, and his story is very much about that. And then other times it would come at its slant. So H was Jim Crow / Reconstruction. So that was like one way to help figure out how I was going to shape the chapter. But honestly, I was pretty cutthroat about keeping each chapter less than 40 pages. 20 to 30 was my goal, because I knew I wanted to cover so much time, about 250 years. And I also knew that I didn't want it to be like a 1,000-page long novel. I wanted like that swiftness, and for time to feel like a character in and of itself. Like you get to experience, just the speed at which these things are happening. I think sometimes when people talk about slavery, they talk about it as though it's this thing that happened a million years ago and therefore has no bearing on our present. And I think when you break it down in this way, it becomes clearer that what we're talking about is somebody's like grandmother's mother. It's not actually that far away. And I think that sense would have been lost if the book had been longer, if you like kind of lost track of people as you went along. So that's why I felt very strongly that I had to like get it done in 30 pages. If I couldn't, then it wasn't the right story. But except for Quay's chapter 3, every story is basically what I set out to do. Quay was the only one that I like completely rewrote, and had to kind of skip and go back to. So I think most of it was just good instincts, I guess.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say, that you had these sort of orienting points of what is happening in history that is relevant. And it also often they weren't like the most obvious. I learned a little bit about like convict leasing and things that I wouldn't have been like top of mind for me. But I also feel like you do a really beautiful job of incorporating like significant social historical touchstones, but not having the characters feel like mouthpieces or like props for those moments. I feel like there's a lot of nuance on the page and sort of a remarkable individuality to each chapter, voice, character. Like even though you're meeting so many, there's like 14 characters, so you meet so many, but each one felt like very distinct and complex, though you obviously had to sacrifice some exploration of character for the like trajectory, as you're saying, and for the kind of just the limitations of like 30 pages and trying to fit so much context into that. But I'm just curious, like how you achieve that balance of like deep character work while having them be in some way sort of like not necessarily representational, but like kind of exploring these larger themes. And the same, I think, issue like carries over to your other book, Transcendent Kingdom, as well, which deals a lot with the opioid crisis. And, but the characters don't feel like vessels for that. So
that's a good question. I mean, I was trying to think mostly of how we experience time, how we experience like the big events in our own lives. Like obviously major things are happening right now, right? Like I won't get into it, but major things are happening right now. And yet in terms of like how we live day to day, you still have to like pick up your kids from school and get dinner on the table, and people are still falling in love and making babies, and like life goes on as well. And so whatever the big like background thing is, obviously has ramifications for one's personal life, but at the same time, you're just living your life. And so keeping that front of mind, I think, is how I was able to write these chapters. Like, yes, Kojo is directly impacted by the Fugitive Slave Act, but also he's like a father with a lot of kids and trying to take care of them and go to work. And I think that's just kind of, that's what history feels like on the body, like as we're living it. Even though we're constantly making it and a part of it, well, it's not, not to scope from it in terms of like what it feels like to be kind of historical. It's actually put into that usually if you're 14.
Yeah. I loved, I came across a passage or a quote where you were like talking about the book's development, and at some point Samantha Chang, who we both studied under at Iowa, pointed out that these were all love stories of a kind, and that resonated with you. And I thought that was a really beautiful way to think of them, even though like as all love stories, there are a lot of like tragic love stories. But it seemed like you, as much as there's like these larger issues, also like lots of moments of real extreme like tragedy and trauma on the page. They're also really about these like smaller moments of connection, trying to cohere, trying to be a family, trying to find romantic love. Like, they give it the tenor that you're left with, at least for me, is not like, even though there's like lots of dark moments throughout the book, but is sort of much more complicated emotionally than that, like connectivity, healing.
I've heard Ta-Nehisi Coates refer to it as like the beautiful struggle. Like, like obviously the people in the novel are fighting for something, but part of what they're fighting for is that intimacy, is that opportunity to like just love someone and make a baby with that person and raise that baby and like just live in peace. And that's what makes the struggle worthwhile. The struggle against the like larger forces, that's what makes it worthwhile, is the opportunity to have that intimate life.
Although so poignantly in this book, like that urge is interrupted like a great deal. I mean, to realize as you read the cumulative like loss of even parent to child legacy, and then there's a sense of kind of having to start over, that like as a reader, but like that's also happening in the line, or you're just like, the character doesn't even know the context, their immediate context, which I found was really effective, because there were moments where I was like, wait, who are we with? Like, who are their parents? But it was not through any like lack of your establishing the previous generation, but it just kept getting like cut off at the pass, and that was a really emotional, effective reading the book. I just want to ask a couple more questions. I found the tone of these chapters like distinct in and of themselves, but also not in the way of like short stories where they seem of a piece of a world. Like there was a real overarching tonal coherence that interested me. And I was just sort of curious, like your approach to the voice of the book. And I read somewhere that you were interested in folklore and like folkloric traditions, and was curious if maybe that kind of voice informed the narrative cohesion, or what you were thinking as you, and yet each chapter also has a very distinct, I think, like tonal world or something. I mean, you're going through so many different contexts that that sort of has to happen. But
I was thinking a lot about folktale. I was thinking about kind of the oracular nature of storytelling, like the idea that people would gather around and hear a story be told to them, particularly for the earlier chapters. Like, it's a very distant third person for those early chapters, and then it gets closer as you move through. And by the time you get to Marcus, it's a very close third person. But I wanted that like kind of narrowing to happen. And I guess partly it was because I never thought of the book as a collection of short stories. Like, it always
doesn't read that way at all to me. I mean, I've heard people describe it that way.
Yeah, and I mean, the chapters can stand alone, but obviously, like, for me, the way I would describe it is like a rock or a ball, like, rolling down a hill, collecting moss as it goes down. Like, it's that sense of like something cumulative, which again is different than how we experience a standardly structured novel, but to me still felt of a piece, as you said.
That is really interesting.
So I think that's where the voice came from, this understanding that even though the chapters are distinct, the overall feeling is of a gathering.
And I'm reminded as it opens, it does have a kind of broad mythological structure, like on the night of the fire, information that the chapter's protagonist doesn't really have access to until later. Yeah. So that is a really elegant, like, narrowing of scope. Yeah. At last up, I just feel like I have to ask, as a sort of mother-oriented moment, not just like the effects of becoming a mother on your process or your time or structure, but if there's any effect of being a parent that you can see in like your relationship to the materials or the work, like what you're drawn to, even maybe form. I don't know, like as a novelist, I know you had a beginnings as a poet or have that in like your writerly history. And if there's just any, interplay between the writing and the role.
It's such a good question. And I feel like ask me again in like 5 years.
Yeah, totally.
Because it's hard to know. It's really, I do strongly believe that it all goes into the work, like everything goes into the work, but it's always really hard when you're in the thick of whatever that thing is, to understand how it's going to appear, like falling in love for the first time, or like losing a parent, or like whatever the like large forces of my life are. They wind up in the books for sure. The book that I'm working on now, and I know somebody's going to ask about it. I'm so superstitious, so I can't say, or I will jinx it. But I started before my daughter, my oldest, was born, and the immediate impact is that it's going to take me much longer than the last 2 books have taken me. But in other ways, I don't know, like, to understand what that kind of love feels like, obviously it must change you somehow, and change your relationship to story. And writing has always been like the way that I think and make order or make sense out of the world. So this is like these 2 people are like the most earth-shattering things to have happened to me, and obviously I will need a way to make sense of it, but I don't know.
I think it seems like really fertile place to be like kind of blown open.
Sure.
And
exactly.
Only something good could come from that.
I hope so. It's going to be different, but I hope it's good.
I think that's a good place to so thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you.